Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're learning about ES6 template literals. We'll learn what they are, how to use them, and why they matter in JavaScript. If you find this video useful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more beginner-friendly JavaScript tutorials. Let's get started. So let's go over what a template literal is. Now, a template literal is just really a string that you're using backticks for. So instead of single or double quotes, you're using backticks. And within a template literal, you also can have template expressions. And we're going to talk about those, which are essentially just placeholders to insert values you might want to have in some sort of output that you're doing. Now, to show you what it looks like, we can see that here. Template literal just has backticks, like so. That's what it looks like. And we're going to talk about the value of that. Why is that beneficial? So here we have an example we have without template literals, we're first going to talk about. And it's just a message that we're displaying in the console. And it's using, in this message, we're using some variables, some values of Alex and 25. So we're going to say, hi, my name is Alex, and I'm 25 years old. And this code works, and we can see that here, like so. But it's not the most ideal, especially when you're getting into more complex code, more robust code. This is not the most ideal situation where you're using concatenation to make this all come together. So instead of doing this, you can actually go ahead and use template literals. And so we can see that here. Now what's happening is instead of using double quotes in the example prior, we're now using backticks. And with backticks, we are creating essentially one single string. And within the string, you're going to need to use template expressions because these variables are no longer by themselves. They're no longer separated. And using concatenation, they're now within the string or this template literal. And so we need to use $ and curly braces to wrap any variables that we're using, any placeholders. And so we are adding name and age. And so you will see that this code also works as well. Now, to give you a more practical example of this, of why this is beneficial in everyday context, let's say you have a blog post, a blog website, and you want to have all your blog posts come to your website. Normally, this would come from a server or backend, and then you would use fetch to grab those posts and then loop through them. You could use template literals to create the HTML for each of these posts and then display it on the page. And so to go into this example, let's say we already have fetched these posts and we want to, let's go ahead and break this down. So let me go ahead and show you this and understand it. Here we have posts, and these are just statically generated. Normally this would be on a server, but in this case, for this context, we're just placing it here. So we have these posts. Now, in order to get these posts into our browser so that we can actually see them, we need to loop through them. So that was that next step. So what we're doing here is we're doing post.map, and for each of the posts, there's only two, which is what goes here, post. We're using an arrow function. For each of these posts, we want to go ahead and insert some HTML. And so that's all we're doing here. We're creating the HTML. And the benefit of template literals, it allows you to do multi-line statements like this, where you're essentially almost like writing HTML normally in an HTML page. And so we have the article tag. We have some inline styles just for simplicity. And then within the article tag, we've inserted a second heading, a paragraph, and the content underneath. When we're finished with all this, we'll use join to combine all of this into a string. And then we are going to add it using inner HTML. And so we can actually see this result. So if we were to run this, we would get back this in the browser. This is what it would look like. So this is, one example of using template literals to easily add code that you can understand and have that context. Now, to show you as well, so normally, now you could also, if you didn't have template literals, it would be a bit more complex. And you can see that here. You can see that we have the article, and essentially we're doing concatenation to make this work. We use template literals to really make it simple, but if you don't have template literals, you would have to concatenate everything and wrap each tag with single quotes like we're doing here. And you might be wondering, this is not the most ideal, as you can clearly tell, but you might be wondering, why are we wrapping in the first place these tags? And I want to dive into that. Now, wrapping HTML tags and quotes, essentially is, JavaScript can't read HTML right off the bat. You have to use strings of HTML markup instead. And if you write HTML tags without quotes, then JavaScript will try to interpret them as code, such as, a comparison operator, which isn't valid syntax. Unlike libraries like React and frameworks like Next.js that use JSX, which is something you might want to get into after you learn more about, inserting elements using JavaScript, you can hop into React, which JSX is essentially syntactic sugar that looks like HTML, but compiles to JavaScript. Plain JavaScript doesn't support HTML-like syntax, and to insert HTML, we need to wrap them in strings, essentially, and use inner HTML or create element. Now, we can see, from our example with template literals, we saw that we use the inner HTML to insert this on the page. Now, if you weren't using template literals to this degree, you also could get the same output by using something like create element. And I just want to show that since we're talking about it. So if we come down here, you also can have more control with this option. So this is an alternative. And rather than using a whole template literal to insert everything, you're creating each element individually within your JavaScript. So we still have the post, that doesn't change. And we're looping through the post, that also doesn't change. But for each post, we're then creating each element. So we create the article, we add some styles. We create the title, we add some styles. We create the author, add some styles, and create the content, add some styles. And then after we create these elements using .createElement, we are then appending those children to article, the main element, and then finally adding it to the body, like so. So this is another way to do it. It gives you a bit more control with all of the elements. Either can work for this type of example with like blog posts, but this one is going to be that template literal. It's going to be maybe a bit easier to get started with because it looks like HTML when you're writing it out. And you can see, if we were to run this, you can see that we get back the same example, the same type of code here in the browser. Let's recap what we learned. We learned that template literals are strings written with backticks, not regular quotes, and they let you write multi-line strings more easily and insert variables or expressions using template expressions. If you're building a blog, template literals make it easier to insert content into your page. You get your post data from your server, loop through it, build HTML using template literals, and then display it on the page.